Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How One Large Insurance Company, and that's nationwide, successfully shares and collaborates outside of the firewalls. I'm Teresa Resick, Director of Webinars here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And with me today are Robert Burkhardt from Nationwide, and we also have Beth Vogel from Box and David Jeunesse from IBM. Box is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. And before we get started, just want to offer a few pointers for viewing today's webinar. By joining our webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience. So feel free to open, close, or resize the different windows. And across the bottom of your screen is a list of all of the widgets available to you. We do have a new feature for you today, and that is group chat. You do need to open this up yourself, and you do that by clicking on the widget icon that's across the bottom. And with this, you will be able to chat with each other. And so be aware that you'll be able to see everything that everybody posts in there. But also, Allison and I will be joining in the conversation throughout the day, throughout this webinar as well. Do ask questions to the speakers throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature, and that's to the left side of your screen. We will hold these questions until the end, where we should have about 5 or 10 minutes to answer them. But you can also use this feature to comment or ask for technical assistance. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time. Just look to the resources list, and that's to the right side of the slide area. And there's also some other documents and links in there to help you learn more about today's topic. At the end of this webinar, a brief survey will open in your browser, and we'd appreciate it if you take a few moments to offer your feedback and to suggest other topics for us to cover. You can also access survey in the widgets across the bottom of your screen. And we are recording this webinar, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. So now I'd like to introduce the speakers that we have with us today. And as I mentioned, Nationwide is joining us, and Robert Burkhardt is the Chief Evangelist of New Technology Innovation with Nationwide. He is looked upon as an industry-recognized subject matter expert for mobile and collaboration technologies. Bob is responsible for reimagining the way his organization works by building and implementing technologies that drive productivity gains, decrease costs, and increases sales. And Beth Vogel is the Group Marketing Manager at Box, where she is responsible for defining and executing the go-to-market strategies for the cloud content management and workflow portfolios. She holds an MBA from Wharton and a BA in Finance from the University of Texas in Austin. And David Jeunesse is a writer and public speaker who specializes in communicating the benefits of new technologies to business decision makers. At IBM, he develops the messaging strategy for the ECM division. He writes executive speeches and videos and produces IBM live events. Prior to 2010, Mr. Jeunesse performed a similar role with Capture Pioneer DataCap for 12 years. So as I turn things over to David to begin speaking today, just remind you to go ahead and open up the group chat and feel free to chat with each other and comment throughout the webinar. So David, let me turn things over to you.
Well, thank you, Teresa, and let me tell you why this is going to be a great hour. So companies in all industries are rushing right now to build their version of the digital business. And even many industry leaders are falling by the wayside because they're not able to move quickly enough. And one of the pillars of the digital business is creating new business models that deepen an organization's interaction with its partners and with its customers. And the challenge is to find new ways to break down barriers that have been created by either traditional departments, by technologies, or by geographical distance. So cloud and mobile, and increasingly analytics, are the tools of disruption. And today, we have the great privilege of having a good conversation with an industry leader that is moving quickly to build a new digital business models that blur those boundaries and engage users and IT and business in new and interesting ways. So we're going to see how Nationwide is balancing the needs of users who need simple, intuitive solutions that don't require a lot of training. You're going to see how they work within the rules laid out by IT, which has to balance security concerns and maintain an infrastructure built up over time. And you're going to see how these new solutions support the goals of the business, which is nothing less than the transformation of how it connects with customers and partners to create new value propositions. Before we get started, I think we should take a look at an important aspect as we go through our discussion today, and that's how Nationwide has addressed some of the common obstacles that can scuttle new ECM and collaboration projects. For example, AIIM and others have done studies that report that up to 60% of workers think that the collaboration tools that IT gives them aren't good enough. And some of the reasons are they're too much training, they aren't intuitive, they're not reliable, they're too slow, they're too complex. Another consideration is adoption. And for years, AIIM has reported that ECM success rates remain lower than expected, often as much as 50%. And again, poor planning, insufficient project management, there's a lot of reasons for it. Sometimes even the users aren't involved in solution design or not properly trained. Also, let's consider that 93% of workers today say they don't have support for mobile workflows. So you push content into the cloud, great. But if you can't collaborate and put content into a business process, well, you haven't really left the starting gate. And then finally, let's consider the shadow IT problem. And that is still a major headache. 76% of employees think it's just fine to put business documents, confidential data, and so forth on personal devices or on cloud servers. So with that kind of mentality, it really is a challenge for an organization to have reliable governance and compliance, and even worse, it might subject the company to fines and other penalties that impact the business. So let's keep all this in mind as we get to our special guest today. So Nationwide Insurance is a Fortune 100 company, a leader in property and casualty insurance with a full financial services portfolio, including life insurance, banking, retirement, and investments. And at a time when insurance companies battle for the hearts and minds of consumers with clever advertisements, most people you ask will know the 5-word jingle. In fact, Beth, can you sing us the 5-word jingle?
Thank you, David. Does it go a little something like Nationwide is on your side? Maybe something
Excellent.
like that?
Excellent. There you go. You see? And everybody knows that. But one of the real reasons we're excited to have Bob with us today is Nationwide Insurance is a longtime ECM practitioner, and they've often been at the forefront of technology adoption. I think they're living proof that innovation and new business models is what creates advantage in competitive industries. So to begin our conversation, I'm going to invite back my special colleague on our virtual stage, Beth Vogel from Box.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you for that great introduction and setting up the premise for this conversation with Bob. So Bob, I want to go ahead and bring you up here. We are really excited to have you today, and I want to start off this conversation because you have a level of in-depth subject matter expertise, specifically around mobile and collaboration. And I know the audience today is interested in learning more about how you've managed collaboration and content, given that you are such a large and globally dispersed organization. So with that, I was wondering if you can start us off by telling the audience a bit about your team. You have a team dedicated just to mobile and collaboration. So given that sounds pretty unique, can you share about why Nationwide has made mobile and collaboration a priority?
Sure. Hey, and welcome everyone. Glad everyone could be here, and thanks for having me on today. I think it's going to be a great conversation. So, why do we think mobile and collaboration is important, or how did we get to where we're at right now? Mobile and collaboration for us is it's how we touch our customers. It's how we touch our members. It's how all the interaction points we have. Remember, for an insurance company, we sell a promise, right? And we need you to trust us. And how we do that is by exchanging information with you. And we do that in a number of different ways, but historically, it's always been a pain to get insurance, right? Just like it is if you're going out to get a mortgage, a loan, or anything else. It's just a pain to all the paperwork you have to go through, all the information that needs to be exchanged to get that accomplished. And we saw that that was a barrier for us to do business, and we set out to find a way to make it easier to communicate and interact with our not only our customers but our business partners, and that's how we came along, doing mobile and collaboration. I guess the mobile part really comes in is things have changed. A while ago people were doing everything just solely based on their computers, and as the introduction to smartphones came in, people really want that at their fingertips. So much so that we see a very high percentage of our business is only done using mobile devices.
That's really interesting. So if we were to gauge on a spectrum of complexity and maturity, can you share, based on your experience and your own conversations with industry peers, where do you see Nationwide is on the spectrum when it comes to technology adoption, specifically around cloud and mobile and others?
Right. It's interesting. I think we talk about this all the time amongst ourselves with our own team. I think if you would ask our own team, we think that we're at the beginning stages. We would gauge ourselves at like a 1 or 2 out of 10. I think when I talk to my peers in the industry, they think we're probably a 7 or 8 out of 10. But it really just feels like we've got started, although when you look back at what we've been able to do, we have been able to overcome many obstacles, and we truly have some really magical things that we've been able to do.
Wow. That's really interesting that you see that even from your own expertise, you see such a clear line of abilities to grow your technology capabilities. So with that, I want to jump maybe into the next slide. I'd love it if you can expand a little bit more on what were some of the challenges. You noticed that you said you were a 1 or a 2. So can you explain a little bit about the challenges, about your pressures that Nationwide faces today? You highlighted mobility already.
Right. So, yeah, absolutely I can go through this. And remember, I said we feel like we're a 1 or 2. I think everyone else thinks we're a lot higher. But here's what we've really identified from our challenges that we came across. We know that any time that we customize anything, and at Nationwide, we always nationwide it. That's what we've always done with things. Our email solution, a long time ago, it wasn't the email solution from the vendor. It was Nationwide's email solution because we customized it to the point where we couldn't even take updates because we've changed it so much. So what we've decided is we can't continue to customize everything. We shouldn't build everything in-house. We should leverage our partners and leverage people out in the industry that are really doing things the best way. A long time ago, my father told me, you can't beat a man at his own trade. And I think it's like that when we're talking about cloud storage or we're talking about cloud services. These companies, like Box, are made and solely do this type of work. And they do it very, very, very well. And I think in many cases, they would do it better than we could ever hope to do it. So the first thing is, looking at that, we knew we had issues with customization. We knew we had issues with, can we build and scale things to handle mobile and collaboration? Can we secure them in the appropriate ways? And we didn't really feel that internally we had those things that we could do ourselves, or we would be able to turn a quality product out. And that's where we started to do our investigation of the tools available in the industry. And based on our requirements that we had, we found the appropriate tools, and that's where Box fits in.
That's great. Can you expand a little bit more on some of the challenges when it came to sharing information externally and some of the challenges your employees faced?
Sure, that's a really big thing. So some of the challenges that we had is, as a matter of fact, I can remember one conversation I had with one of our business partners. They're like, Bob, we need to talk to you about how we collaborate with external people. We went over, and my first question was, well, who do you collaborate with? And their answer was, we don't know. Well, what type of documents do you send to people? We don't know. Well, how often? We don't know. We can tell you it costs a lot of money. Sometimes we get fined because we don't do it. Sometimes we send things over and over again, never knowing if people get them or not. So our whole process was built around the same way that we've been doing it for, 90 years in some cases. We would mail things out. We would print them out and mail them to people. We would fax them to people. We would send them out on DVD and CDs. We would, send them out any of the traditional ways you can think. The problem with that is we never had any metrics or information or auditing to find out if any of that information ever made it to anyone, or is it really getting to the right person, right? You're mailing CDs, let's say, and you're mailing another envelope with passwords. Pretty much anyone who gets the password and the CD can pretty much use your data. And then what happens if those people pass your data off to someone else? Right? There's no control around that data. So those were all the issues we were trying to solve, because it was all these unknowns. And once you start to talk to those with your business partners and tell them the things that you can change about it, that's when they really get excited, because people don't really know they need the auditing and reporting capabilities that you may be able to provide until you can give it to them, and then they can't live without it.
Right. And you mentioned the changing of your customer base a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what the effect has been on your business with this shifting strategy to mobile and personalized experience?
Right. So our customer and member base has really changed over the years. As the aging of certain population, and as the introduction of the millennials into the workforce, our total world has been changing. It used to be people wanted a person-to-person relationship. They wanted to meet and talk with a person face-to-face, like their insurance agent. Then we moved on from that to people wanted to have maybe they're comfortable talking to people over the phone. Then it was they wanted to use a website. But what we're seeing now, and we actually monitor this, is that much of our business right now is done with millennials, which is almost 50% of the workforce, and how they want to communicate and interact with us is through applications. They don't want to talk to someone. They want to use something on their mobile device to turn in their claims, pay their bill, get their information, and sign up for insurance. So we have to make sure that we can have solutions in place that take care of people from millennials to the other end, right? We have to have solutions in place. But knowing that millennials are going to keep growing, we have to do more and more to engage those customers the way they want to be engaged.
Yeah. Great. And it sounds like this is when you started evaluating and eventually decided to move to Box to solve for some of these challenges. Not to put words in your mouth, but would you say that's fair?
No, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
And for many reasons, a cloud solution that's available on pretty much any platform, but it's really the integration, that it provides you. And that's why we chose Box.
So obviously, with Nationwide being around for as many years as it has been, you had multiple systems, I'm sure, in place before your purchase. So what exactly did you do to reconcile and integrate this with some of your other applications? Can you talk about your strategy to that?
Sure. So I got to tell you, looking at that, it's kind of a combination of a couple things. So you don't have to rip and replace things. Solutions like Box actually complement many of your current solutions that you have in place already. So what you're really doing is you're enhancing and building on top of those solutions. Could there be a time when you may rip and replace some other solutions? Absolutely. But you don't have to boil the ocean all at once. You work on very specific pieces at a time. So what we did at Nationwide is we looked for what were the immediate use cases that we could get value out of, and that's what we went to first. And once we start to build some of the momentum with the easiest use cases, we started to look at some of the harder use cases and some of the integration points. And if we can integrate one system, great. Can we integrate another one? And that's how that's the progression of what we went through to put our solutions in place that we have right now.
Yeah, that's a really great segue because you mentioned that you guys looked at specific use cases. So in this next slide, you talked a little bit about those use cases. So can you share how you actually determined which business or functional requirements you decided to focus on, and what did you prioritize, and how was Box instrumental to that?
Sure. Well, so from this slide, I think the thing to point out here is that when we first brought Box into the mix, we were focusing on enterprise file sync and share. That's really what we were looking at. And enterprise file sync and share is it's kind of the cornerstone for almost all platforms, really. I mean, if you look across, even if you're talking about email solutions, any of your sales solutions, CRM solutions, or anything like that, even things like Yammer, everything has kind of a file sync and share portion to it, even things like Facebook. And so that's what we initially thought, this means everything to us. And how can we solve those issues? And once we started to solve those issues, we started looking around and saying, well, wait a second, this is great stuff, but a lot of other tools do the same thing. We know there has to be more to it. That's where you get to the blue part there, the ECM, the govern, secure, audit, and enable workflows, right? It's how can we take it to the next level? So the blue part there represented more value to our organization than all of the green part. It's where we can truly start to look at our business processes and create efficiencies with our business processes, right? So you can add workflow in there. You can integrate with other systems. You can truly start to change your organization. And then when you get to the outermost ring there, the platform services, that even adds more value to your organization, and it sits on top of your ECM component. So those would be things like developing new websites and new solutions, new mobile applications that are going to integrate with that middle layer there, the enterprise content management, to perform those critical business functions. So as you go out, they mean more and more to your organization. At least that's how we found it at Nationwide. And we can go through here in a little bit. We can go through some very specific use cases. Matter of fact, we're coming up to it now. So if you look at this slide, this would be more of some specific use cases that we have. So from a platform services perspective, we know at Nationwide we mail a tremendous amount of documentation out to people still. Some of it is by regulation, actually. So as an example from like a document portal, I was in our printing facility a couple months ago, and one of our members had a commercial policy. They had some questions on, so they requested the policy be sent to them. And our policy is that when a member requests it, we also send a copy of that policy to our agents. Well, that policy, that commercial policy, was 59 pounds.
Oh, wow.
59 pages. Yeah. So 59 pounds. So that document was a little over 1,500 pages. Now, we're pretty convinced that customer probably wanted to see page 1,202 to 1,203, but who knows, right? And so we thought, can't we make this better? And so we looked at a way to create a document portal that maybe we could still send the customer the printed one if they wanted it. But what if we made that document available to our agents or even our members instead of printing it for them? Would that be a better solution? That sure would save a lot on printing. And when I say we spend a lot on printing, I mean we spend millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars on printing. And if we can cut any of that cost out, that's a tremendous value to our organization. If you look at another unique thing there, like using these type of cloud services even to replace internal systems. We actually had a payment system at Nationwide for our agents. And what would happen is the agent would place information about the new business, and they place it in a folder. And what we use some workflow to bring that in, and we process it, and then we return a notification of payment right back to our agent. That payment system used to take about 30 days or so for them to get notification of payment. And then, of course, if it took 30 days for notification of payment, it still took even longer for them to actually get the payment for that business. Now we have almost a real-time processing of that same work, where someone may be able to submit something through this process. They may actually get notification for payment the same day and receive the actual payment within a day after that. Tremendous value there. If you look at things in the blue here, if you look at our the voice, video, and document submissions, at Nationwide, we get a tremendous amount of information from other people. Let's look at, like, for a claim, for instance. So there's a claim for an auto accident. We may have some voice recordings of interviews that either the police or our investigator or our claims investigators may do. We may have video from banks or traffic cameras or anything that may come in, or cameras from a parking lot or a business that may have it. And then we may have all kinds of different documents that people want to send in. All that information comes in many different forms, right? It's never the same type of voice or video. As a matter of fact, for voice and video, it could be anything of 100 different file types that may come in. And we've always had an issue with bringing that information in and being able to listen to or view the voice or video recordings. And then even the document submissions, it could be any different file type. What we found by using a solution like Box is it's able to play those videos with no matter what the file type is. Same with the videos. You can play almost any video through Box, and you'll be able to see those things. And you are able to open up documents that you may not be able to open up on your PC, but you can open them up through Box. That's a tremendous value. So, just looking at that alone, we were able to do, save costs in our organization. We would have specialty machines to do these type of things. We don't have to do that anymore, and more people can view and use this information. So that's really good. And then if you get onto the third-party sharing, I think some of the unique ones we have there, in one of our groups we call our Special Investigations Unit, they share information with thousands of people a week, right? Federal, state, local law enforcement, court systems, other insurance companies are insured, just tons of different people, the Department of Insurance even. And historically, in sharing that information, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast here, we would do that through mail, through fax, through many different means. Many times, if we don't get that information there by a specific time, we could be fined by the Department of Insurance. We could be fined by the court system. We could lose a court case. We may not be able to, do the things we want to do for our members. But by using tools like Box, what we have is a way that we have auditing and reporting for everything that we do. So when we're sending something out to someone, say at the Department of Insurance, and they say they need it by April 5th at 2 p.m., we can absolutely tell that we sent that out, that someone opened it and looked at it, and we can report that back to people, potentially saving us fines. So, that's a real important, part here, is it isn't just the collaboration, it's the auditing and reporting and the controls you can place on the documents that mean so much.
Yeah, what I take away from everything you just said here, Bob, and this is such a great narrative, thank you for providing the details, is that all of this has to do with sharing, but it's not as simple as just sharing. It's the fact that you're providing the visibility and the security and reporting around actually revamping a lot of your processes that otherwise were manual or custom. And that seems to be a lot of the value that you're getting out of the implementation.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So with that, obviously you're not doing this with Box alone. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how you are benefiting with some of the integrations that you're using with some of your custom applications and existing applications today.
Sure, that would be great. So I guess if we, just start off from a high level here, like if we were to talk about like some of our mobile applications that we're using for capturing information, we capture that. We've used the SDKs and the APIs to build a mobile application, and we ingest information through there. So say we're capturing either a document scan or a picture or anything. That then gets into our ECM layer there. And what we do within that ECM layer, we may do some workflow. Maybe we can use many different types of tools. Actually, we could use SharePoint to do some workflow. We could use FileNet. We could use Box Relay, which I bet we'll talk about here in a little bit. We use those tools to do some workflow. And then at Nationwide, we have repositories where the system of record is, right, where data ultimately will reside. And in many cases, that's FileNet. But it isn't just FileNet. With any large organization, you have a whole stack of tools, within your organization that are there. And at Nationwide, we've built long-standing processes with many of those tools. And you see a lot of those on here, like Stored IQ and Case Manager and FileNet. We use those tools. We don't have to change what we're doing in those tools. What we're doing is creating a new on-ramp to get that information in, and in some cases a new off-ramp to get that information out. And we're making the user interface much better by using Box for that integration.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at the rest of the slide here, the cover of this golf ball, I call this my golf ball slide, but the cover of it is all those other things you need that many of your users don't really pay attention to, but many other people do, which is how are you going to handle legal holds, rights management, e-discovery, all those other protection things around there, to comply with your regulatory compliance from whatever governing body you may have or your internal policies and procedures. That's so important to make sure when you're looking at the overall solution that you're developing.
Hey, Bob, I wanted you to maybe illuminate us a little bit more on that area. I know that, insurance is a very governance-heavy industry, and then you've got investments and banking and other industries that have a whole other set of acronyms, and you've got some of them listed here, FINRA and so forth, in the lower right corner. I don't see SEC 14-7A, and yes, I'm showing off, but I do know that they are very, very serious. And so, how do you, as you're building out a new application, how do you make sure that all of those checkboxes are checked off?
Right. So that's a great point. So you're right, and the other financial one should be in there too. So how we do that is at Nationwide, we mentioned the team that we have put together. We have a virtual team that we've put together, and we bring in people from many different parts of our organization. So the team we have that works on mobile and collaboration is made up of people from IT, people from information risk management, people from compliance, data management, legal, our business partners. And when we look at specific use cases, we look at those use cases, we identify the business value, we identify the information risk, and we obtain a legal opinion about each use case that we look at. Once we do that, we then create a defined list of requirements that we need to accomplish to be able to implement that use case. Once we implement that use case, then we document it as as a standard use case within the organization. And I know that sounds like a lot, but what that means is for a cloud solution at Nationwide, a thing like Box, it's actually rated as a low risk. And it's rated as a low risk because we've met all the requirements by legal, compliance, information risk management, and everyone else as to the controls needed to use for solutions. So how we address all the regulatory compliance is we list those exact requirements that we need to check off, and we document those, and we can show people that we can meet them by our auditing and reporting. And that's how we're able to implement those very delicate use cases, including PCI use cases or HIPAA if you're in the healthcare. We have both.
Right. Well said. Good best practices.
So thank you. Great question. So Bob, given that this is what you're using today, can you talk a little bit more about your future plans with Box?
Sure.
And where you see this going?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, when we sit around and look, we feel like we've just begun. As a matter of fact, a term we've used many times is that, we're not even up to picking the low-hanging fruit yet. So we're going to get there. But we've done some really cool things. So here's where I think we can, the other things that we can do in Box and we can do relatively soon is we've identified some very specific use cases of where it's holding back our business because of the way we have to collaborate with our business partners. So let's say that if you look at some of the pieces and parts that we have, like I mentioned, obtaining a loan. At Nationwide, we buy and sell finance and for our financial services. And within that, what we've identified is it's very, very difficult to buy and sell finance at a very large scale within a financial institution. And the organizations that we deal with are only the largest organizations in the business, and we transact business back and forth with each other. And in talking through many of those situations, the reason we do it is it's so hard to do and so labor intensive with the information that you have to pass back and forth. We think that we've been able to find a way that we can do this by using cloud services, specifically cloud sharing services like Box, to share that information back and forth in a manner that we can make it painless to do that type of business. If we can make it painless for the very top organizations that we deal with, could we potentially open up that business to anyone within the industry? So, and if you look at financial services, so there are many. There are national banks, regional banks, local banks, and if we were able to do business with that entire group, how much more would that mean to Nationwide? We feel that would open us up for billions of dollars in new sales, billions. If you apply that same thing to our retirement plans, public sector, that would mean billions to that. If you apply that same to our retirement plans, private sector, that would mean billions of dollars in new sales there. And that's just three parts of our business.
Wow. I love that you really are taking digital transformation to heart when you're thinking about your long-term strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to, and I think any business that's out there who thinks that they can't benefit from a digital transformation, I think is really missing the mark, and I think may not be here in the future. Because if we don't change, if these large organizations like Nationwide, we've been around for 90 years, if we don't change and adapt, I'm not sure that we would be around. And I think that's the same for any of the large players that are out there. And anyone, if you look within your business, I am positive there will be ways that you can transform your business with mobile and collaboration, with sharing information. I'm positive of that. You'll be able to save time, money, effort. I know you'll be able to do it.
So when it comes in, you mentioned people will be able to do it. When it comes for those listening on the call, being able to build a business case as to why they should prioritize mobile collaboration and really make that a center for their business, can you share some of what you've seen as the benefits, whether they're hard benefits or soft benefits, that have helped you build the momentum and business case internally within Nationwide?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So some of the first things that we noticed, being an insurance and financial services organization, we love numbers, right? We got people who do nothing but look at numbers all day long. And one of the first things we noticed is that we had a reduction in paper costs. And when I say a reduction in paper costs by implementing some of these solutions, I mean a first-year savings of 67% reduction in paper for office print.
Wow.
For the users, I got to qualify that. For the users that we had on the solution, we saw a 67% reduction in paper costs. That's pretty huge. That's absolutely huge. But then if you look at some of the other things that we started noticing, we're like, why are the storage rates, or why are the storage costs going down? Where is that data? Do we have less data? And what we started to figure out is we do have less data. The reason we have less data is now we have it in a solution that we store at once. We're not storing it 10, 15, 20 times. We're storing it once, and everybody can have access to it. So we had many things that were duplicating effort, data, information, processes that we didn't have to have anymore, because everybody could access things from one solution and collaborate in that same solution. And then so beyond those savings that we found there, then we move into another part, which is risk. And what we identified is, you know what, some of the ways we were sharing information is absolutely horrible. And there's no controls on them. And people do it every day. When you send out a letter in the mail, you never know who's going to read that or who's really getting it, or where it may go. If you send out a CD or DVD, like I mentioned, you really don't know where that information goes or who has it. But once you get to a solution like Box, when you can send out information, you do have that information now. You do have a way to audit and report on things. Auditing and reporting is huge. A matter of fact, what I've always heard is that if you can't audit and report on it, then it didn't happen. So, that's the key. And then, you got to look at, if you, instead of having data and information, and this is what we found out, in 100 different places, if you can put it all in one place or less than 100 places, it does reduce the burden of your e-discovery, compliance, risk management, all those other pieces that you have there. And then, I know on the slide here it mentions the significantly less shadow IT, and it isn't just shadow IT, I think. It's if you don't provide the right solutions for your people, they will find a way to do it. And there are organizations out there that will come into your business and do an analysis for you, and they will show you everywhere that your employees are saving data. And I just want to tell you that it's really, really, really scary, because no matter how many solutions you think you have, I assure you that your users are finding thousands of different ways to do it. And the reason they're doing it is because you're not providing them the right solution for their needs. And it's those people who you need to get to educate them and show them, or get their requirements and give them the solutions that they need. And then the last thing, but it's really important, is just the productivity gains that you get. I mean, if you can automate many of these things, if you can make it easier just to do the jobs, like the one use case I mentioned to you, which says the Special Investigations Unit, once we started to provide the data and showed them metrics, they had performance metrics that they could go by. And so they were looking, and they're like, wow, we have some people that are unbelievable at this and some people who maybe are not as awesome at this. But what they were able to do is to align the appropriate resources to do those type of activities that were the most productive. And what they also found out is they needed less people to do those type of activities. And I think every time we've implemented a use case, we've found a way to reallocate some resources to more productive uses. So, and I do think we've seen increased customer satisfaction across many factors of our implementation of Box, because people say it used to be so hard to get the information. Now they have it at their fingertips. It's easy to use. It's easier to collaborate. It's easier to get what they need to get done. And then, of course, it's real time because everyone can get to it. So I think those are the big things.
Thanks so much, Bob. So for the last segment of our conversation, for the next few minutes, I'd love to make sure people really understand some of the best practices when it comes to nationwide implementation and change management approach. So I'm going to let you take it from here.
Sure. So for some best practices, here's what I would suggest, right? Do your research first. This webinar is a great way to do it. Talk to your peers out there. There are tons of different places you can get information on cloud solutions and just how, what are other people doing? Internally, you got to know your numbers. You got to know some of the things that you're doing. And what I mean by numbers are, do you know how much storage you have available? Do you know how much storage people are using? Do you know the cost of storage within your organization? Do you know the cost of printing within your organization or mailing, postage and everything? Know your numbers. You should identify your pain points. Talk with your business partners. So this isn't an IT thing only. You got to talk to your business partners and talk to people in legal, information risk management, and find out their pain points about sharing information. Everybody's going to be more than happy to talk to you about their pain points. Believe me, that's what people love to talk about. Find an executive champion. I found that if you're going to really try to get this moving, you got to find that one person who can be your executive champion, who can go to the other executives, who can rally the troops around. Hey, here's something we're going to do. Get a team together, and this doesn't have to be a team that is specifically aligned to this. It can be a virtual team. Here at Nationwide, ours is a virtual team. We identified people from many different segments of our organization, and we've brought them together to work on this. And I got to tell you, it seems like an organizational team, even though we're all a virtual team, because that's how we work together. We go to meetings together. If you ask anyone on that team what we're doing, everyone knows. And you got to put together that great team, and make sure that you get the people from the business on that team too, not just IT, legal, and information risk management. You got to have some business people on there. Once you can get all that done, you got to do some marketing, right? You got to let people know what you're doing and how you're doing it. The ideas that you have. People will give feedback when you do your marketing. And then, the last thing is you just can't give up. I assure you, our first try didn't go very well. Our second try didn't go very well. But we kept trying, refining what we were doing, refining it, and eventually everyone was like, hey, this is some good stuff. Let's move this forward. So those are some of the best practices I would give everyone.
Those are great. And I know as a bonus, we'll have some of the questions you've asked your business to help people think about how to implement and what they need to consider. But I would love then to end it on a lessons learned. If you could do this over again, what would you recommend people not do that you've taken the pains of telling them not to do? They shouldn't make the same mistake. What should they start, and what should they continue?
Right. So I think we've talked a lot about this stuff maybe we should stop doing. But the customization stuff definitely was a big thing. We initially went into this thinking we're going to nationwide everything, and we didn't have to. We thought, we initially looked at things that we're just going to take care of the immediate need in front of us. And we started to take a step back and say, well, wait a second. We got to look big picture and what's next. And we had to stop thinking we knew where everything was, all of our data was, and how it was being used. We thought we knew our environment inside and out, and we didn't. So what we had to start doing was listening to our users and finding their pain points and understanding why they wanted or needed to do something, and paying attention to how they were doing it. What specific business processes did they have? What processes needed changed? And really identifying the pieces of their business that you feel that you can change the most by adding automation, by adding cloud storage, by adding collaboration. And those are the key ones you want to make sure you get. You can't fix every business process, but I assure you there are ones out there that you can make tremendous transformational difference in. And then think about any just the general efficiencies you can create for people, right? And that all goes into the automation of it. Those are the things you should start doing. And then continue to partner with others in your organization and evangelize and tell your ideas to anyone who will listen. I'm telling you, at Nationwide, that is something that I do almost on a daily basis as I meet with different people within our organization just to give them the spiel on what we're doing. Here's what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and how we're helping people. Can we help you? And the last thing is don't give up. Don't give up. Eventually, people will see the vision that you're trying to create for them.
Great. Thank you so much, Bob. This is super helpful. I want to make sure we have time for questions. So with that, I'll just let David wrap us up and then hand it off back to Teresa for questions.
Yeah, real quick, in about 30 seconds, I wanted people to understand the nature of the partnership between IBM and Box. We struck a strategic partnership in 2015, 12 years partnership where we would combine the best of both worlds, the ECM strategies, products, and best practices that IBM has with Box's great offering that has the security, the reliability, scalability that our customers need, and to imagine together what the new world of cloud-enabled ECM would be. And here, I think we're seeing an excellent example of a customer that's really taken it and shown us what's possible. And together, Bob mentioned something called Box Relay. And Beth, if you could give us just a brief description of this jointly developed product between IBM and Box.
Sure. So as kind of the first proof to our joint partnership, we are launching our first workflow solution later, tentatively this summer, called Box Relay. So this is our first extension to really automate some of the processes that happen both within an organization and outside an organization. So be on the lookout for that release coming soon. All right. So Teresa, I'll kick it off to you for Q&A.
Yes, thank you. We've been listening to Bob Burkhardt from Nationwide and Beth Vogel from Box and David Jeunesse from IBM. And as we mentioned questions, there's one slide. I just want to show it quickly to you because here's some questions for you to ask your business. And there's a lot of information on this slide. Download a copy of the slides because there's a PDF for that available to you to get all of the details on here. More ways for you to help your business, and this is tips that came from Bob Burkhardt from Nationwide to share out with all of you. So just wanted to make sure you know that this is there. Download the slides. You can get that. Questions. We have lots of questions, and I know we're not going to get to all of them today. So quickly, just want to try to squeeze a few of these in. And Bob, someone is asking, how has Nationwide secured sensitive content that's on mobile devices? You have the ability to clear the content off mobile devices. How do you handle that important aspect with the way you do business?
Sure. So how we do that on mobile devices is we use an enterprise mobility management tool. There are many of them out there. such as BlackBerry are good, Intune, AirWatch, Mobile Iron, things like that. And what you do is Box integrates with all of those solutions, and that's how we secure information on our mobile devices.
Okay. When you realized that you were first looking at a cloud-based solution, when you were first making your decisions before you had chosen Box, was there pushback within the Nationwide organization about using a cloud-based solution? And how did you deal with that?
There sure was. Oh, there sure was. As a matter of fact, when we first brought it up, we were told there is no way ever you're going to use a cloud solution to put our data on. And how we worked through that is we said, okay, we understand, so why can't we do it? And what are the requirements to let us do it? And once we understood from them what their aversions were, and really what that came down to is what their requirements were, we set out to meet all of their requirements. And you know what? We did. Matter of fact, when we presented that to everyone, we went through it. Not only did they say we could do it, they said that Box was a low risk because we more than met their requirements.
And another question for you, Bob. Someone's asking how many people are on your virtual team. Is it does it include your executive champions, to your business partners? Who all was involved in working with this?
Right. So our extended virtual team does have several executive champions, right? But on our working team, I would say, which is more the virtual team, the working day-to-day team, that includes basically about 6 or 7 people. It's people from IT, specifically a technology planner, we call them, a product manager, someone who owns Box. We have an information risk management person, an architect, and someone from our legal team, as well as somebody from our basically an associate experience team. So those 6 people make up our working team.
Okay. I would love to keep having Q&A go on for a really long time because there are so many good questions in here, but we are getting to the end of our webinar hour. I just want to invite you to check out some in-depth training opportunities that AIM offers, and there's a link in the resource list for you, and that can also be found at aim.org/training. So there's and also the ECM and the ERM programs have been updated, and they include the master level certificate program fully available online. And so there's a lot of changes that have just been launched this week with AIM training. Just also remind you that this webinar has been recorded and will be available in the next day or two at AIM.org's Resources Webinars page. Don't forget to download the resources that are to the right of the slide area. And when the webinar is over, a brief survey is going to pop open for you, and I value your feedback greatly and would appreciate hearing from you. You can also offer your comments and suggest future topics for us to cover. So appreciate if you take a few moments to complete that survey. And very much want to thank our underwriter, Box. Without the support from our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to bring you these free educational programs like our webinar program. So thank you, Box, for your sponsorship and support. So as we bring this webinar to a close, I do want to leave you with our speakers' closing thoughts or key takeaways from everything we've discussed today. So I want to start first with David Jeunesse from IBM. Your closing thoughts today.
Well, thank you, Teresa. You know, for several years, AIM and Gartner and Forrester and others have been talking about the convergence of ECM and cloud file sync and share. And here at Nationwide, we get to see the fruits of that pairing. I mean, it's a great synergy, and it's really demanded by the digital business, which I think Bob made very clear. It's all about building deeper connections between companies and their changing customer base. So it's terrific to see this. I think we also see that more people are benefiting from ECM in these scenarios, and it's a great story. And Bob says they've just begun. So I look forward to where they take it next.
That will be an interesting thing to keep in touch with. Beth Vogel from Box, your closing thoughts today.
Sure. I think what I really appreciate is how Bob shared how content really is central to their organization. And I think for a lot of the audience members, it's central to theirs as well. And managing success of that, whether it's managing, sharing, making sure it's extended upon their business process to customers is key. And so I encourage everyone here to think about where they are in that maturity matrix when it comes to cloud collaboration, that it doesn't need to be as basic, and there's an extensibility to it. So think about when it comes to digital transformation, all of the benefits when it comes to managing your content in the cloud, and refer back to Bob's great benefits that he highlighted.
Thanks, Beth. And the man of the hour, Bob Burkhardt from Nationwide, your closing thoughts today.
So I would say, don't wait. Get started. Learn your numbers, partners with others in your organization, evangelize and tell your ideas, and just don't give up. You can do it too.
Thank you, Bob. And that is all that we have time for today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. For AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we will see you next time. And have a great afternoon.